There are moments in life that reveal the true character of a person. Not the grand gestures. Not the wedding vows or the birthday speeches. The real character of a person is revealed in the quiet, private moments. The moments when no one is watching. Or so they think. A woman named Eleanor had spent 3 years trying to be exactly what her husband wanted. She had given him her time. Her loyalty. She had given him her love, even as her own body was quietly trying to kill her. She had been diagnosed 18 months earlier. Late stage. Aggressive. The doctors had given her odds she refused to read out loud. She had gone through 6 rounds of chemotherapy in 2 years. She had lost her hair, 22 pounds, and most of her strength. But she had never, not once, lost her dignity. Until tonight. You see, the true nature of a partner often remains hidden, until the money runs out. Or until a black motorcade descends on the neighborhood. Her husband, Marcus, believed he was finally cutting himself free when he threw Eleanor's belongings into the rain. He thought he had won. He dismissed her as a burden. A sick, penniless woman who had outlived her usefulness. But Marcus was about to receive an education. Some secrets are kept not out of shame, but for protection. And when the black SUVs rolled up to his driveway that night, the gasps from his neighbors were just the beginning. Stay with me. Because what happened next changed everything for everyone in that house. And it started, with a suitcase tumbling down a staircase. Before we dive deeper into Eleanor's story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from, we'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming stories. Now, let's begin. The sound of luggage hitting hardwood floors has a particular cruelty to it. It's not loud, exactly. But it echoes. And it echoed through the house on Birchwood Lane like a verdict being read aloud. Eleanor was on the landing, gripping the banister with both hands. She moved carefully, the way people move when they know their body cannot afford a fall. Chemotherapy had taken so much from her. Her hair had only recently begun to return, thin and soft, like something newly born. Her frame, once full and healthy, had been carved down to something fragile. Even standing required concentration now. Marcus. Her voice was quiet but steady. Please. Just talk to me. Marcus Whitfield was not the man Eleanor had married 4 years ago. The man she had married had sat beside her in the oncologist's office and held her hand while the doctor used words like aggressive and systemic. He had cried. He had promised. This man staring up at her now looked at her illness the way one looks at an overdue bill. With impatience. With resentment. With the particular cruelty of someone who has already decided the answer is no. I've made up my mind, Eleanor, Marcus said, his voice clipped. This isn't working anymore. You need to leave. Eleanor's hand tightened on the banister. She took a slow, careful step down. It's 40 degrees out there, Marcus. I have nowhere to go. My immune system is your problem. Not mine. And there, in the living room, making herself entirely at home, was Vivian. Marcus's mother. The architect of everything that was about to happen. Vivian Whitfield had never liked Eleanor. Not from the first dinner. Not from the wedding. Not even during the months when Eleanor was too weak to leave the bedroom. Some women dislike their daughters-in-law for petty reasons, jealousy, territory, the usual. Vivian's reasons were different. Vivian disliked Eleanor because Eleanor had never been afraid of her. And Vivian was the kind of woman who needed to be feared. Vivian set down her wine glass with a soft, deliberate clink. You've been very patient, Marcus, Vivian said softly, as if commenting on the weather. But the accounts don't lie. Eleanor's eyes moved to Vivian. Something shifted in her expression, not fear, but a quiet, tired recognition. Vivian, Eleanor said, her voice measured. Whatever you told him, you know it isn't true. Vivian smiled. It didn't touch her eyes. I know that $60,000 moved out of the joint household account in the last 14 months, Vivian said, lifting her wine. I know it went somewhere that isn't this household. And I know you've been hiding it from my son. Eleanor exhaled, a slow, controlled breath. The kind doctors teach you when the pain gets ahead of you. That money paid for my treatments. The ones that your son's insurance conveniently didn't cover. She looked at Marcus. You signed those forms, Marcus. You saw those bills. I saw transfers I didn't authorize. Marcus snapped, moving toward the staircase. You were moving money out of our account for months. Mom found the statements. And then I found this. He held up a piece of paper. Eleanor looked at it. Her face went still. That's a letter from a real estate attorney, Marcus said. You're listed as the primary owner of a property in Westchester County I have never heard of. A property worth over $2 million, Eleanor. Where did that money come from? Here is what Marcus Whitfield did not know. Here is what Vivian Whitfield had deliberately refused to investigate too closely, because the truth would have complicated her plan. But we'll get to that. Because right now, the situation in that hallway was about to get much worse. Marcus reached the bottom of the stairs and grabbed Eleanor's suitcase from the landing, beginning to pull it toward the front door. You had your chance to explain it, Eleanor. You said the property doesn't exist. Then you said you'd explain later. Later was 3 weeks ago. Marcus, I was in the hospital 3 weeks ago. The hospital I was paying for, he roared. Vivian, from the living room, let her go, sweetheart. She's been lying since day one. Eleanor turned to look at her mother-in-law, and something in her face, some last reserve of patience, finally, quietly, closed. Vivian, Eleanor said softly. I have spent 2 years fighting to stay alive. I have spent 2 years watching your son struggle with the financial weight of this family, and I never complained. I have been sick and scared and I have watched you poison this marriage one whisper at a time. And I want you to remember, very clearly, that when this unravels, you will be the one who started it. Vivian laughed, a short, dismissive sound. You have nothing, Vivian said. You came into this marriage with debt, medical bills, and a diagnosis. You brought nothing. You are nothing. And now that my son has real prospects, she paused deliberately, we don't need a sick woman dragging him down. Marcus opens the front door. Cold air floods in. The rain outside is relentless. Eleanor did not beg. That, more than anything, is what I need you to understand about her. She did not plead. She did not fall apart. She took the banister with both hands, descended the last 3 steps with the careful dignity of someone who had practiced walking through pain, and she looked at her husband. You're making a mistake, Marcus, she said quietly. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know who. Marcus stepped aside and gestured at the open door. Eleanor walked through it. She had no phone. Marcus had taken it, for the investigation, he said. She had no car. It was in the garage under Marcus's name. She had no wallet. It was on the kitchen counter, 20 feet away, behind a locked door. What Eleanor Hartwell Sato had, standing in the freezing rain at 9 p.m., was a suitcase, a cancer diagnosis, and a body running on the absolute last reserves of its will. And somewhere, deep in her coat pocket, a small pill organizer. The pills that kept her alive. She had 2 days left. Eleanor looked up at the closed door. Then she looked down the dark street. And she whispered something into the rain. I'm sorry, Dad. I kept my promise for as long as I could. I need you now. The suburb of Maplewood Grove, Virginia, was the kind of place where people prided themselves on keeping to themselves. Which, as Eleanor now understood, was just a polished way of saying, we see everything and we do nothing. As she moved down the sidewalk, her suitcase while catching on every crack, she felt the eyes. The darkened window of the Thompson house, someone stepping back from the glass. The porch light at number 14 flickering on, then quickly off. They had heard the argument. The whole street had heard it. They had heard a man throw a sick woman out into the rain. And not a single door opened. Eleanor reached the end of the block. She found the small bus shelter, a thin metal roof over a bench, and she lowered herself onto it with tremendous, visible effort. Her body was sending signals she had learned to read over 2 years of illness. The dull ache behind her ribs, familiar. The slight blur at the edges of her vision, not good. She pressed her hand to her chest, willing her heartbeat to slow. Breathe in for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 4. Her oncologist, Dr. Ramona Kessler, had taught her that. When the world gets too loud, Dr. Kessler had said, find your rhythm and hold on to it. Eleanor held on to it. Inside the warm house, the mood was very different. You did the right thing, Vivian said, pouring herself more wine. She was bleeding you dry, Marcus. Medical bills, property transfers, who knows what else she was hiding. You were about to drown. Marcus pushed his food around his plate. She looked really bad tonight. I mean physically, she always looks bad. That's her strategy. The illness is her power, Marcus. It keeps you guilty. It keeps you trapped. Marcus looked up. You think she's faking it? Vivian's smile was careful and knowing. I think some people know exactly how to use weakness as a weapon. This is what manipulation looks like, up close. Not screaming. Not cruelty. Just quiet, consistent poison dripped into the ear of a man who loved his mother too much to question her. Vivian Whitfield had been doing this for 40 years. She had destroyed her own marriage with it. She had severed her son's relationship with two good friends. And she had spent the last 2 years carefully, methodically dismantling the one woman who had never submitted to her. Eleanor had 2 more doses. If she didn't get inside somewhere warm in the next hour, the cold alone would send her into a medical crisis. Hypothermia hits cancer patients faster. Her immune system had no reserves left. She knew this. She had been told this very clearly by Dr. Kessler. Eleanor, you are not like other patients. Your body cannot regulate temperature the way it used to. Cold and stress are as dangerous for you right now as a fall. She thought about calling for help. But her phone was gone. She thought about knocking on a neighbor's door. But she looked at the closed curtains and thought, they watched me walk away and said nothing. They will see me standing on their doorstep and feel inconvenienced. So instead, Eleanor Hartwell Sato did the only thing she had left. She closed her eyes, pressed her hand against the cold metal of the bus shelter, and she waited. And she whispered again into the dark. Dad. Please. They appeared the way true power always appears. Quietly. Unhurried. 3 black SUVs, engines barely above a murmur, moving in perfect convoy formation through the rain-soaked streets of Maplewood Grove. This was not law enforcement. There were no sirens, no flashing lights. This was something older. Something more final. This was private money. Serious money. The kind that didn't need permission. The neighborhood, which had stayed carefully indoors while a sick woman was thrown into the rain, now found it impossible to stay inside. This was different. This was interesting. The 3 SUVs pulled up in front of number 19, Marcus's house. They filled the street completely. The engines went quiet. The doors of the lead vehicle opened. 2 men stepped out. They were large, professionally large. The kind of large that isn't accidental. They wore dark suits that had been custom-fitted because no store carries those sizes. They moved with the particular stillness of men who have been in genuinely dangerous situations and have simply decided they won't be afraid anymore. One held a black umbrella, opened above the rear door of the middle vehicle. The rear door opened. A man stepped out. 65 years old. Silver hair, cut close. A charcoal wool overcoat. He stood on the wet pavement with complete stillness, the stillness of a man who has never once in his life felt the need to rush. He didn't look at the neighbors watching from their windows. He didn't look at the rain falling on his expensive shoulders. He looked only at the house in front of him, the way a man looks at something he intends to reclaim. He took a single, measured breath. And then he reached into his coat pocket and lit a cigar. Inside the house, the room lit up as headlights swept across the curtains. What on earth, Vivian said, moving to the window. Marcus. Marcus, come here. Marcus came into the living room. He looked out at the motorcade. The blood drained from his face. I'll handle it, Marcus said, straightening his collar, summoning whatever remained of his authority. He walked to the front door and pulled it open. He was ready to be firm. Ready to be territorial. Marcus stepped onto the porch. He saw the 2 enormous security guards. He saw 3 blacked-out SUVs blocking his entire driveway and curb. He saw the older man in the overcoat, standing in the rain, cigar in hand, looking directly at him. And every word Marcus Whitfield had prepared, dissolved. The older man took a single, slow drag on his cigar. Exhaled. And spoke. You must be Marcus. His voice was deep and unhurried, like something carved from a mountain. I believe you have something of mine. Marcus's mouth opened. Who are you? You can't just, this is private property, where is my daughter? The question landed like a stone in still water. Your daughter? Marcus said slowly. I don't, Eleanor's father is dead. She told me. The older man smiled. It was the kind of smile that has no warmth in it at all. My name, he said, taking one deliberate step onto the walkway, is Raymond Hartwell. I'm Eleanor's father. And I'm going to give you exactly 10 seconds to tell me where she is before I have my associates dismantle every decision you have ever made. Raymond Hartwell. Chairman of Hartwell Capital Group. A man whose net worth had been discussed in Forbes magazine on 3 separate occasions. A man whose name appeared on the boards of 2 hospitals, 1 university, and a federal advisory committee on healthcare infrastructure. A man who, 4 years ago, had watched his only daughter walk away from everything, the estate, the name, the fortune, for a man she believed loved her. A man who had never, not for a single day, stopped watching over her from a distance. Raymond looked down. He saw the muddy drag marks on the front walkway. He saw the suitcase, still in the puddle near the road, its clasp broken. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He turned to one of his men. Find her. Now. Thermal sweep. The 2 guards moved with immediate, quiet precision, one pulling out a tablet showing a drone heat signature map of the neighborhood. Raymond turned back to Marcus. I'll need a word with you inside, Raymond said. It wasn't a request. Raymond Hartwell hadn't lived a simple life. He had built an empire over 40 years with a combination of intelligence, patience, and the absolute refusal to be fooled. He had been in rooms with heads of state. He had negotiated with people who had tried to ruin him. He had survived 3 recessions, a hostile takeover attempt, and the death of his wife. He had never, in 40 years, been as close to losing his composure as he was right now. Raymond walked to the mantelpiece. He picked up a framed photo of Marcus and Eleanor from their wedding day. He looked at Eleanor's face, the smile she wore before illness. Before loneliness. Before this. He set the photo face down. You called her a liar, Raymond said, still not turning around. You accused her of hiding money. Of deception. Marcus stood near the door. With respect, Mr. Hartwell, if that's really who you are, Eleanor was transferring significant amounts out of our joint accounts. She was hiding real estate, she wasn't hiding it from you, Raymond said, finally turning. She was hiding it from her. A beat of silence. What? Marcus said. Raymond reached into his inside coat pocket. He removed a folder, thin, precise. He set it on the coffee table. Open it. Marcus crossed the room slowly. He picked up the folder and opened it. His eyes moved across the pages. His face changed. Inside the folder were 3 things. First, a statement from the Hartwell Family Trust. Monthly disbursements to a named account. Eleanor's name. Going back 4 years, beginning the month she got married. Second, a letter from the Hartwell estate attorneys confirming Eleanor's position as primary beneficiary of a trust valued at $280 million. Third, a handwritten note from Eleanor herself, dated the week of the wedding. Dad, I know you'll keep watching. I know you'll worry. Please respect my choice. I want to know if he loves me for me. So I'm keeping this quiet. Just for a while. I promise I'll tell him when the time is right. Ellie. The Westchester property, Raymond said. She put it in your name. She was planning to tell you about it for your anniversary this year. It was a gift. A home she wanted to surprise you with when her treatment was finished and she was strong enough to celebrate. Vivian, from the corner, tried, this could all be fabricated. Raymond looked at her for the first time. He looked at her the way a glacier looks at a candle. The money you accused her of stealing from your son's accounts, Raymond said, was her own inheritance disbursement. Every dollar. She could have lived in a penthouse in Manhattan. She chose to live here. With him. He gestured at the modest living room. She worked as an accountant making $52,000 a year because she wanted a real life. She wanted to know she was loved for something other than my money. The room was very quiet. She has been paying for her own cancer treatments, not to hide the expense from you, but because she didn't want to use your money for something she felt was her problem. Raymond's voice cracked, very slightly, for just a moment. She has been paying out of her personal trust while going through chemotherapy so that you wouldn't feel burdened. Marcus sat down. He didn't decide to. His legs simply stopped working. There is a particular kind of silence that falls when a man realizes he has destroyed his own life. It isn't dramatic. It's very, very quiet. Like the silence after a door closes. Marcus looked up at Raymond. The property attorney. The real estate letter. Vivian said, "Your mother obtained a letter by contacting the attorney's office and misrepresenting herself as Eleanor's healthcare proxy," Raymond said flatly. "She read an incomplete file. She didn't tell you what she found. She told you what she decided it meant." Marcus turned to look at his mother. Vivian said nothing. And that moment, that small, devastating silence from a mother to her son, told Marcus Whitfield everything he needed to know about the last 4 years of his life. Raymond's phone buzzed. He looked at it. His face changed, went white beneath the composed exterior. "Mr. Sterling." One of his security men appeared in the doorway, pressing his earpiece. "Thermal found her. Bus stop at the junction. Sir, she's not moving. Body temp is dropping." Raymond was out the door before the sentence finished. Raymond Hartwell, a 65-year-old man who runs a $280 million empire, was running down a suburban street in the rain, his overcoat flying behind him, Italian shoes splashing through every puddle. Behind him, Marcus stood up. He tried to follow. The second security man stepped across the doorway. "Mr. Hartwell's instructions," the man said quietly. "You stay here." Marcus looked at the door. Then at his mother. Vivian opened her mouth. "Don't," Marcus said. It was the first word he had ever said to her that sounded like a door closing. Raymond found her at 9:47 p.m. She was on the ground behind the bench, curled against the corner of the shelter where the wind was marginally weaker. Her coat was soaked through. Her face was the color of wax. Her lips had taken on a bluish tinge that made Raymond's heart seize in his chest. "Eleanor." He dropped to his knees in the mud. "Eleanor, I'm here." She opened her eyes. They were unfocused. "Slow." "Dad," she whispered. Her voice was barely above the sound of the rain. "Am I dreaming?" "No, sweetheart." Raymond's voice cracked, not much, just enough to reveal what was underneath the fortress. "I've got you. I'm right here." He pulled off his overcoat immediately and wrapped it around her, tucking it under her body, pulling it over her shoulders. "Cold," Eleanor murmured. "I know. I know. Stay with me." She was confused. The cold and her body's exhaustion were pulling her in and out. But through the fog, something remarkable, she wasn't crying. Even here, at the lowest point a human being can reach, sick, alone, discarded, in the freezing rain, Eleanor Hartwell Sato was not crying. She was holding on. The SUVs arrived, screeching to a halt. Doors flew open. The medical team inside moved with practiced, immediate efficiency. "BP is critically low," the lead medic said, kneeling beside her. "She's in early hypothermic shock. We need to go. Tell Dr. Kessler to meet us at St. Vincent's," Raymond commanded. "Her oncologist is Ramona Kessler, get her on the phone now." "Dad," Eleanor said, gripping his hand as they moved her onto the gurney. Her grip was surprisingly firm, a last reserve of strength. "Yes. I'm here. If something happens," she started. "Nothing is going to happen." "If something happens," she repeated, more firmly, "don't let him near my things. Don't let him make decisions. Promise me." "I promise you," Raymond said, climbing into the back of the vehicle beside her. "Nothing he touches. Not one thing." The convoy peeled away into the rain. Red tail lights fading. Silence falling over Birchwood Lane. In the street, Marcus had made it to the end of his driveway. He had seen the medics. He had seen his wife on the stretcher. He had seen his father-in-law hold his daughter's hand as the door closed. He stood in the rain. No coat. And he watched the lights disappear. His phone buzzed. "Alert, joint account ending in 7731 has been frozen. Balance, $0. Please contact your branch." Marcus stared at the screen. Then at the empty street. Then at his mother, who had followed him outside and was standing on the porch behind him. He did not turn around. He simply said, "Go inside, Vivian." Pause. "Please." Marcus Whitfield woke the next morning on the sofa. The house was cold. The heating bill, he would later discover, was 3 months overdue, covered until last month by an automatic transfer from an account that no longer sent transfers. He checked his phone. 14 missed calls. 6 from his boss at the architecture firm. 3 from the bank. 2 from a number he didn't recognize. 1 from his attorney, a brief voicemail that said simply, "Marcus, call me immediately. We have a serious situation." He drove to work. The parking garage barrier didn't lift. "Sorry, Mr. Whitfield." The security guard's voice was careful, formal. "I've been told not to let you in." Marcus parked on the street. He walked into the lobby. His boss, Gerald, was waiting by the elevator. Beside him, 2 men in dark suits. A cardboard box on the reception desk. "Gerald." "My badge, Marcus." Gerald looked like a man who had not slept. "As of 8 a.m. today, this firm has been acquired by Hartwell Development Partners." Marcus felt the air leave the room. New ownership conducted an immediate audit of current personnel. Gerald couldn't meet his eye. There were expense account discrepancies going back 2 years. "The decision has been made, you're letting me go," Marcus said flatly. "We're terminating your contract. Effective immediately." One of the suited men stepped forward and handed Marcus the cardboard box. It contained a coffee mug, a family photo from his desk, a pen. It took 4 hours for the rest to fall. The car, repossessed by noon. The mortgage, a notice of default arrived by email at 2 p.m. The credit cards, frozen by 3 p.m. And at 4:30 p.m., a process server rang the doorbell of the house on Birchwood Lane. Marcus opened the door. The man handed him a thick envelope. Superior Court of Virginia. Plaintiff, Eleanor Hartwell Sato. Defendant, Marcus Whitfield. Petition for absolute divorce. Separation of all marital assets. Restraining order pending medical review. Marcus turned the pages with hands that had begun to shake. On the 3rd page, a note. Handwritten. On cream-colored stationery with the Hartwell capital letterhead. "Marcus, Eleanor is in intensive care. She stabilized overnight. You should know that. She is a good person and she nearly died in the rain because of choices you made. I am not a vengeful man by nature. But I am a thorough one. The audit of your firm's accounts has been forwarded to the appropriate federal authorities. The expense discrepancies are yours. Vivian was correct about that, at least, though she used accurate information in service of a lie. You have 48 hours to sign the divorce documents. If you do not, the criminal referral becomes formal. Eleanor will not contact you. I am asking you not to contact her. She asked about her garden this morning. She did not ask about you. Raymond Hartwell. And here is what I need you to sit with for a moment." Vivian had left that morning. She had packed 2 bags and driven to her sister's house 3 states away without a word. The woman who had whispered poison into her son's ear for 40 years, the woman who had pointed at Eleanor and said, "She is the problem," had quietly, cleanly removed herself from the wreckage she had created. She left Marcus a sticky note on the kitchen counter. It said, "Call me when you've sorted this out. Mom." That was all. Marcus signed the papers that evening. He used a ballpoint pen. He cried while he did it, not the righteous anger of the night before. The deep, formless grief of a man who finally understands what he had and exactly what he did to it. 18 months is a long time. Long enough for a woman to complete her final phase of treatment and receive a clean scan. Long enough for hair to grow back full and thick and beautiful. Long enough for a foundation to be built, funded, and launched. Long enough for a life to be rebuilt from the ground up, not back to what it was, but into something stronger. Something chosen, this time, with full knowledge of its worth. She wore deep burgundy silk. Her hair was short and close, the way she had worn it when she was 28, before she'd ever met Marcus, before all of it, and she wore it like a declaration. She looked like a woman who had been to the edge and stepped back. Not unscathed. Better. Eleanor leaned into the microphone. The room fell silent. "I founded the Hartwell Sanctuary Fund," she said, "for one reason. Because I spent 2 years sick and afraid, and the thing that nearly broke me wasn't the cancer. It was the isolation. The financial control. The quiet, daily message that I was a burden to be managed rather than a person to be loved. She paused. Financial abuse doesn't look like what you imagine. It doesn't announce itself. It looks like, I'll handle the accounts. It looks like, you don't need to understand the paperwork. It looks like locked doors and frozen accounts and a woman with a suitcase and 2 days of medication standing in the rain. A murmur passed through the audience, recognition, the particular resonance of truth. I'm standing here tonight because someone didn't give up on me. Because my father, a man I spent 4 years keeping at arm's length, showed up in the rain anyway. Because loyalty doesn't expire. She looked at the front table. Raymond Hartwell sat with his hands folded, watching his daughter the way a man watches a sunrise. He didn't applaud. He didn't need to. There was a man outside. Standing in the cold, the way certain people end up standing outside of the lives they used to have. Marcus Whitfield had taken the bus from his apartment, a studio unit in a building that had parking lot lighting and thin walls. He'd been passing by, he told himself. He'd seen the banner, Hartwell Sanctuary Fund Annual Gala. He'd stopped. He looked through the glass. He saw the room full of light. Full of purpose. He saw Eleanor at the podium. He saw the woman he had accused of being a liar, standing in front of 200 people, speaking with a calm authority that he had spent years trying to talk her out of believing she possessed. He pressed his hand flat against the cold glass. Raymond saw him. He didn't move toward him. He didn't make a call. He simply looked at Marcus across the street, with the particular expression of a man who has already said everything that needs to be said, and decided the rest isn't worth saying. He finished his cigar. Dropped it in a receptacle near the door. And went back inside. Marcus's phone buzzed. Automated reminder, monthly support transfer processed. Reference, final settlement agreement. $1. Not a gesture of generosity. A reminder that they didn't need anything from him. A reminder that what he had destroyed was not replaceable. Marcus stepped back from the window. Turned up his collar against the rain. Walked to the bus stop. He sat on the bench. And I want you to notice something. The bench was cold and wet and exposed. The very same cold Eleanor had sat in, 18 months before. He sat there alone. And the lights inside burned on without him. There's something I want you to carry with you from this story. Not the wealth. Not the motorcade. Eleanor never fought Marcus's accusations with anger. She never screamed that she was rich. She never threatened him with her father. She simply said, "You're making a mistake. You don't know what you're doing." And she was right. But she was also done explaining herself to someone who had already decided not to believe her. That, perhaps, is the hardest lesson of all. Knowing when the person across from you has already chosen, and choosing yourself instead. Eleanor chose herself. She walked into the rain with 2 days of medication and no phone, and she chose her dignity over her comfort. She whispered to the dark for her father, not because she was weak, but because knowing when to ask for help is its own kind of strength. And Raymond who had watched from a distance for 4 years, who had honored his daughter's choice even when it terrified him, Raymond was there when she needed him. Not because he was omnipotent. Because he had never stopped paying attention. Some people will tell you that this story is about money. About what happens when the rich are underestimated. But I don't think that's what this story is about. I think this story is about what we owe each other when someone is at their most vulnerable. And what it costs us when we choose to look away. What do you think? Did Marcus deserve to lose everything? Or was Raymond's response too absolute, too swift? And tell me honestly, if you were Eleanor, would you have told Marcus the truth sooner? Or did he show you exactly who he was, long before that final night? Let me know in the comments. Your perspective matters here. If this story stayed with you, if it made you feel something, please hit that like button. It truly helps this channel reach more people who need to hear stories like this. And subscribe, and ring that bell so you never miss a story. Because we will always be here, every week, with stories that remind you that loyalty is rare, dignity is everything, and the people who love you quietly are often the ones holding you up without you ever knowing. Until next time, take care of each other. And be careful who you discard. They may be the only thing standing between you and the cold.